Hi everybody, this is Kathleen Scully and welcome to Roshana Gallery here in Paris, 120 Rue Boissy. I'm here till tomorrow and I'm going to give you a little walkthrough of the work that of the paintings that I've been doing.
Okay.
So I'll talk about it a little bit further in detail, but the paint in the window there's hanging two paintings which are some female face paintings that I started, and during confinement in 2020 I started a new way of painting, and I painted on top of the original watercolor paintings that I did of some very, very loose beginning self-portraiture.
Oh, right.
And then I started a new way. Hey Juno! So I'll just walk you through what I did. So in February of 2020, the day after Valentine's Day, I was a little bit in a bad mood. And I had just read a book, or I was reading a book, I hadn't even finished it yet, by Kathleen Scully it's entitled A World Designed for Men. And it's really a book about how much the world is designed for men, by men, and it doesn't take into account our size and our needs, and be way, way above and beyond the social structuring that we all know about already. I also had recently seen at Musée d'Orsay solo exhibitions by two female artists, Tracy Emin and Boite Morse, who was the wife of the brother of Claude Monet, or Manet, I forget. But she was an incredible artist, but she's not very well known, and you have to really dig to find her in a lot of history books. And all of these things kind of converged along with the day after Valentine's Day and being in Paris and being single and in my 40s and all of these things.
Valentine's Day.
And one of the things that I practice in general as a human being, or I try my best to, is gratitude. And I'm really grateful for all of my appendages every day. And you know, I also look up to somebody like Chuck Close, who's had a stroke and he still paints with a paintbrush in his mouth and is still able to achieve amazing, amazing work. So I've often thought, okay, what would I do if I lost my facilities, right? I mean, it might happen one day. We never know what's going to happen to us. So we have to be grateful every day for the things that we do have. And I do practice a lot of yoga as well. And it just was kind of one of these light bulb moments. It was a Saturday night. I was home and I said, you know, I'm just going to try something. And I cut a paintbrush. I covered it in a panty liner and I stuck it in my vagina, and I took pictures of my vulva, and I tried to paint myself. So I had 6 pages left in a relatively inexpensive pad of watercolor paper, and I made this series of 6. And when I painted the first one, I thought, wow, that's really interesting. And I did it again, and I did it again, and I did it again, and again, until I had 6. And I went to bed, but I thought, oh my gosh, I think I have something here. I think this is really, really interesting. I honestly don't know how I controlled it so I didn't get drops, and they were relatively centered on the paper. But I knew immediately that I had something that was interesting here. So a little while later, well, this is February 2020, so we all know what happened a little while later all over the world. And during that time, I reached out to some people that I know, and I said, this is what I did, and this is why I did it, and I don't really know what it is, but I think it's really interesting. And pretty much the feedback was very encouraging, as well as keep going. So I kept going. The pictures that you saw outside were some of the first paintings that I did in addition, or my first initial going forward, because it was confinement and I was left with the paper that I had in my house. So that meant that I was also overpainting what I already had, which was either unfinished or I didn't like it, but I wasn't going to throw it out. And I think something interesting came out of that work as well. And then after confinement, and I again was looking and asking different people what they thought and what I should do and how I can move forward. I was encouraged to go a larger scale, and naturally I started working also in color and also changing the size of the brushes. And that's what brought me to do a lot of different things that are now on the wall that you see here. This one is a much larger scale. The paper quality is not quite as thick, but it's really fun. It's a mixture of watercolor ink, and gouache. And generally the way I have started doing them is that the paintings, being the way that they're made, is very physically taxing. And also, again, I don't really know what I'm getting. I have an idea of what I'm trying to achieve, but it's not really known. It just becomes part of the process that I do a series of about 6 when I do them, because I just keep trying each time. And each one is kind of just a new discovery and a new unknown thing. So during confinement also, and beyond, in order to expand the work into something more than just looking at my vulva to photograph, or to paint rather, I also started exploring my own figure. So all of the figure paintings that are done with the paintbrush in my vagina, the pictures are coming from photographic references that I've taken of myself, which has become a really, really interesting way for me to relate to my own body, because during confinement was, I think for a lot of people, a really challenging time for many, many different reasons. Mine was that I can get a little emotional, but I ultimately in 2020 I lost the job that I moved to France for, and that was really, really difficult for me to handle emotionally. It still is, obviously. I'm also very tired and all that stuff. And as I've worked in fashion for basically my whole life, almost since I was 11 or 12, I've been really focused on working in fashion and textiles. For me, I somehow processing losing everything that I had worked for 20 years, I just took off all my clothes, and I didn't want, it was really beautiful during confinement as well. I was in Paris the weather was amazing. It was warm. I was in my early mid 40s, and I think I was also having kind of I think my hormones were having a last hurrah, honestly. And I didn't want to look at any of my clothes. I didn't want to wear anything. I just started taking pictures of myself, and I all of a sudden had a new way of looking at myself that I had never looked at in this manner before. Regardless of what I might seem to people from the outside, I know that I'm tall and I know that I'm thin, but I have never looked at myself as like a sexy person, or, I mean, I have a flat chest and a scar, and I know that that's very pejorative to talk about myself that way, or that would make me undesirable. But this was the process. It took me till I was in my 40s to say, this is who I am, and I'm really not only comfortable with it, but I'm really proud of it. So there's a lot of stuff that went into this work. And so yeah, so these these images of my figure are from photographs that are taken, and ultimately I would really love to have some of my photographs printed and have the image side by side of the photograph along with the painting.
Yeah.
And yeah, somewhere in this, I started making an Instagram account that was dedicated to this work, and I started to gain a lot of traction right away with the hashtags about feminism, ecofeminism, and stuff like that. And right away in 2021, I think it was, an online gallery in London, the Canopy space, found me and invited me to join into an online art for Earth Day. So I think that was April of 2021. And so I made beet juice. I made my own ink because it was really about doing everything as really sustainable as possible. So with beets, I used beet ink to make those paintings. I didn't bring those here, but I do have them. And then I ended up I made a website where I started putting the paintings up for sale. And I had thought from the very beginning that my first original 6 I would never want to sell, because it's really a very personal story for me, and well, I like them and I don't want to sell them. And but I do think graphically they're very, very interesting, the first 6. And so I found a way here in Paris with the Letterpress of Paris, Letterpress de Paris, to be able to make letterpress versions of the original 6.
Yeah.
So the letterpress versions are in a limited series. I won't do them again. It's 1 through 100. They're all signed and dated. And there's 3 of the first. There's 1, 2, and 3 of the first 6 that are in letterpress form. Because what ended up happening was I put them on my website and I said, please allow for 2 weeks delivery. I had done all the research. I knew where I would get them done and I knew how long it would take. And I got home one night and somebody had bought them. So let me show you the end results. So this is the second one that I did, the 3rd and the 4th, and it's in letterpress and they're framed in a natural wood frame. I also have examples in black frame, which is really nice as well. And the letterpress, the maximum size the letterpress and jewelry can do is A5. What size is this?
This is an A4.
A4.
Yeah.
A4 size. So this is that is it in a simple black frame of that size, or I have it also in the size with a matte, so it's more in terms of the white space that you get graphically wise as to the original.
Yeah.
So that's 2, and that's 2. And what's interesting is you can see the difference between the original watercolor and the letterpress.
Right. Which the letterpress, if there were no glass in front, you'd be able to feel a relief.
And so I can show you that a little bit.
Okay.
So what happened when I spoke with the because it was I heard of letterpress and I see letterpress fancy cards, but I've never done it myself. Or worked with somebody to have it done. So the first step for me was to digitize it. So I photographed the work, the painting. I digitized it in Illustrator. I printed it out and did it many, many times until I got all of the points to be the way that I wanted them to be, that I felt like it reflected the original work. And then I sent that to them. They make a negative out of it, which is kind of like an X-ray in a way. And then not exactly sure how this happens, but from the negative, they make it into a stamp, and the stamp goes on a roller, and it goes in and then they feed the paper in, and
they press it.
It presses it with the ink, and so then it has this relief to it, and it's on really beautiful cardstock.
So, I mean, not to be facetious, but you'd have the relief of your vagina.
Yeah. Or it goes down, so it's embossed, right?
Mm,
This is in relief and that's embossed,
yes.
I think. Like one of these things that always gets confusing. So I made a series of 100.
Oh,
Maybe
okay.
that's quite a lot for, especially for an unknown artist.
No.
But I sell them for very affordable pricing. They're 33 euros, I believe, on my site, and the 3 for 99. Unframed, so you get them like this.
And the 1, then 2, and 3 are sold together as a series?
This it's actually 2, 3, and 4.
2, 3, and 4.
That was because that was what my very first client chose.
Right. Yeah.
So, and I did sell another painting essentially through my Instagram site. I think that's how that she found me, which is
What's your Instagram handle?
it's at the Vagina Paintings. It's
Okay.
_vagina paintings. I think that's how Instagram kind of makes you do it.
Okay.
And then some of the other, so I've done quite a bit of work. What the examples of work that you see on the wall is really a fraction of the work that I've done in this series. I did petite format as well.
What are these?
These are watercolor and watercolor ink paintings. These were kind of my first tries at different brush sizes and colors. So I thought I would just make something graphic and see what I thought about that, as opposed to doing figurative work.
Right.
So that was interesting. And I've also done, this was done in 2020. I didn't sign it, but I did it in 2020. And again, this is all me really just looking at myself, taking pictures, and then doing my best to paint what I saw. These were done in August. In February of 2021, I did kind of an anniversary series. This is on really thick watercolor paper, and so the paintbrush became almost a dry technique. I also used this imagery, which is a looking glass, a mirror. That little thing is the push button on a kind of a cosmetic mirror. And so I liked the idea of it being a graphic, not just of my vulva, but it's really like somebody who's looking at themselves in a mirror, because I do think that's something really, really important. So I have a couple of versions of the mirror. I just think that as women in society, you see imagery of masculine genitalia all over the place, but for some reason we're taught to be shamed or not even look at ours, and I find it totally insane. I mean, this is where we have blood coming out of every day or every month.
And men embrace their genitalia, and we should too.
And we should embrace ours and our diversity in it. We can make another video about that. But this was, again, it was just an anniversary of that. This is my most recent work. Is I did a reclined nude. It's from August of 2022. This was in 2021 also, so I started painting just in red ink, and not that I knew it at the time that it was going to be one of my last periods, but for a couple of years coming up into this work, I was really interested in documenting my menstrual blood, because my period definitely changed in the past few years before the very end, and so I painted this around that time period, and then had some. So this is in watercolor ink. It's a more corally orange, and then I have drops of my menstrual blood on there. So
that's very cool.
These are all from that series, and it's February, and I like hearts, and so I just thought, let's see if I can do the hearts. So I made those as well. this is more,
wow.
sometimes we know we can't necessarily control
Yeah.
exactly how much or when and where it's going to go, but I think, again, I'm pretty sure if the tables were turned, there would be a lot more work like this. Masculine works, and these are sort of unfinished, I can say. But you can see that I keep it because I can always kind of go over it and find something new in it and paint over it like I did on the women's faces on the outside. And then one of the other paintings so far, or series I could say, that has done really well for me has been this kind of seated nude. Yeah, this might have been maybe before the petite format that I started painting in really large color and mixing the size of the brush, right? I mean, again, all of this started not as like thinking I was ever going to do this. It just started as a photograph. It just started as a frustration. And just a process of doing something. I mean, I do, as a creative person, I do things all the time that never see the light of day, that I don't intend for. I'm just trying something out. It's for yourself. And this somehow has evolved into a body of work that I think is really important in this particular time period. Also, one of the things I'd really love to say too is that it started in 2020, so it was since Me Too, and it has been since I've gotten older into my 40s, and as I've continued to do it and I've continued to talk about what I'm doing, I find it also really interesting, the people who are almost they're quite viscerally offended or really don't understand what I'm doing or why I would do it, or I would never tell anyone that. And I find that really disturbing. I don't know if it's disturbing, I just find it very interesting because right now in this world, women have so little agency over our own bodies. And I think as Americans, especially as Americans living in Paris and looking back in the United States and thinking, what is going on? Yeah. And to think, like this is really me taking 100% agency over my body and saying, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this with my body, and you can't stop me. And I think that everyone can do that. I don't want to say like, oh, everyone can do this. I want us to start a movement, or like maybe it will. I don't know. That would be really cool. I mean, I've learned a lot by posting stuff on my Instagram site and getting very interesting encouragement from a lot of women, and also of course, commentary of like, okay, yeah, I get it. Like next time you're gonna put it in your anus, and I don't want something in my anus. I don't want to paint that way. If you want to do that, go right ahead. I also know that other people have been inspired and have tried to do it as well, and I'm happy. I mean, there are billions of people who paint with their hands. Some right-handed, some left-handed. There's Chuck Close who paints with his mouth. That's okay. I'm not saying that I'm also not even saying that I'm the first person that's ever done this. The same way any other painter is not the first person that's painted with their hand. So I'm not here saying like, oh, I'm doing something that's like totally original or crazy, but I do think the story, the why, the process, and then just my own experience of having worked in its color and composition, and I think it, I like certain things, and I like, and I like what I've done, and I've gotten enough encouragement that I continue to do it, and I hope people enjoy it. And yeah. Kathleen, I wanted to ask you about a particular painting. Oh, right. This painting has me intrigued. Can you tell me about it? Yes, thank you for asking. I forgot. Here, so this is one drawing slash painting. Here, I'm gonna get closer to it. That I did with my hands. Yeah. So this was, I've called it Parisian Window Shadows 1, 2020. So So this was the first one I did. There is a video of me finishing the color, but again in 2020 during confinement, I was in my apartment for a long time. That's everybody.
Yeah, we were
it
all
was
stuck.
beautiful, and it was really the first time I had spent so much time in my apartment as well, and watching the shadows go by all day long, and the grate, what are these called? The window grates? The
typical Parisian
window
decorative window
thing where
I don't know what it's called.
And and as I was moving and I knew I wasn't going to have these in my new apartment, it was kind of this farewell to Paris, and it was me capturing my Parisian apartment. So when the shadows came in, I had this natural paper, and I traced the shadows that came in as fast as possible, because by the time I started, the shadow would already have moved.
Time is.
And this here is the negative or the positive, however switching positive of my the shape anyway, the outline of my radiator.
Yeah.
And then that's the metal work.
Yeah.
And I used oil and chalk pastel to go over the tracings, and then after I did that, I brushed everything specifically in a direction to give it a little bit of
sweep
movement. Yeah. So I have some variations of these in different colors, but this is by far, in my opinion, the most successful.
Beautiful. And
thank you.
Can't really tell with the lighting on the video, but the frame is a beautiful dark teal.
Yes, so I had this framed in soap at the Grande Encadrement at the Rue des Haricots. She does amazing things. She also cut a few of the mats in the show because I needed certain mats cut a certain size. The rest of the cadre, the frames, are off the shelf, we say.
Yeah.
But this one is sur mesure. So
wow. It goes well with the color, the blue.
I mean, she just immediately saw it and picked this off of the options, and I just think it came out really, really lovely.
That's beautiful. So. It's just amazing that you traced a shadow, and because I couldn't tell what it was at first, and now that I know, I see it. So that's why explaining art has so many advantages, because I mean, looking at these, you would never guess how they were painted.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, some might be able to guess what this is if they were told, take a guess, maybe. But if they look like flowers, they could be just abstract art. That looks like a rose, that one. But
and I guess we all do look like flowers, right?
We do, yes.
I mean, the orchids and
just like those. But knowing the story behind the art is an important part of explaining. Well, for someone to appreciate it, they have to understand the story behind it, I think. Kathleen, thank you so much for showing me.
Thank you so much for taking the time to being inquisitive about it. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, hope we'll be able to see these again in a future exposition if they're still.
I'm gonna Photoshop them in the Musée d'Orsay.
Yeah, if
they latch on.
If they're not snatched up by.
Yeah, so this series is interesting. So there was 6 in this series. I have sold one to a private collector in Germany, and this is where learning for new artists and doing stuff. I lost one in the post.
Oh no!
Yeah, it was my favorite of the series of 6, and that was the one that she purchased. And she was very very nice in understanding that something happened, and it got lost between the French and German border. And that is why, if somebody wants to know why I'm shipping something for an extra special price, it's because I've already lost one.
Yeah.
So I can't roll it up.
Yeah.
It's watercolor. It's like 350 gram watercolor paper. So
yeah,
they're pretty thick. All right, I have to ship it flat.
Yeah.
And it's big, and it was too big.
Yeah.
So the second time I sent it,
It's not replaceable, so.
no. So everything that I've shown you, except for the letterpress series of 100, are original paintings. They're unique, and I don't plan on doing.
Even the presses. I mean, they've been
presses
printed in limited number.
Yeah,
so.
the letterpresses are 1 through 100. I won't do 2, 3, 4 again. It's certainly not in black. I've thought about doing gold.
Yeah, gold would be nice. Red is. I was thinking red.
Cool.
You can probably.
I could do other colors.
Do both colors
I
together.
probably wouldn't do 100 again unless I become crazy famous. But
yeah. Well, you know, you could be known for your hats, and people find out that you're also a painter. Find out by this video, for example, how they're made, and want to purchase them as well.
Yeah.
And it'll just take off, you know. So talented, such an artist, a creator. I really admire all your work, and you're a hard worker.
Thanks.
You are. You're very diligent, and I'm very delighted to be here.
Oh, well, thank you so much for coming. Appreciate it.
Okay, thanks.